Recently, President Donald Trump announced the freezing of all aid to South Africa and the suspension of future funding. South Africa has confirmed that the only significant aid received from the United States comes from the PEPFAR program, which accounts for 17% of the country's HIV/AIDS funding. Although some may initially assume that this move will inflict heavy damage, it is important to note that South Africa is well positioned to cover this portion of its health budget. Moreover, many observers believe that this decision will be interpreted domestically, and by many in the international community, as a strong stand against U.S. coercion. Diplomatic signaling and national sovereignty. The U.S. decision to freeze aid is seen by some as a coercive measure intended to pressure South Africa on policy matters such as land reform. The move is largely symbolic, given that only one channel of aid, amounting to 17% of HIV/AIDS program funding, is affected. Analysts note that such a freeze signals to the world that U.S. foreign policy may attempt to impose its views through economic pressure. In contrast, South Africa's government is expected to be lauded for asserting national sovereignty. Historical struggles against external domination and the fight for self-determination lend credibility to the narrative that South Africa is not willing to be bullied into changing its domestic policies. Domestic and regional reactions. Within South Africa, many citizens and regional leaders are likely to view the decision as a bold stand for independence. The move reinforces the idea that policy choices are determined by national needs, rather than by external dictates. In regions sensitive to perceived Western overreach, this act of defiance could serve as an inspiration, enhancing South Africa's reputation as a country that protects its autonomy. Health sector and program management. The immediate concern for some might be that suspending PEPFAR funding could jeopardize progress in the fight against HIV/AIDS. However, since PEPFAR constitutes only 17% of the country's HIV/AIDS program funding, the economic capacity exists to cover the gap. South Africa has developed diversified funding sources and a robust infrastructure to ensure continuity of essential health services. Therefore, any disruption in aid is expected to be temporary and manageable. Reputational and strategic advantages. In terms of reputation, rather than experiencing damage, South Africa is projected to receive praise for standing up to U.S. bullying. By resisting external pressure and asserting its right to self-governance, the government is likely to be viewed favorably by many citizens and other nations with similar concerns about external interference. The act of defiance may bolster national pride and position South Africa as a leader among developing nations in preserving policy autonomy. Erosion of soft power and global credibility. The United States has long relied on aid programs such as PEPFAR to project soft power and global goodwill. PEPFAR, which has saved millions of lives, is seen as a symbol of American humanitarian commitment. By freezing aid as a means of applying pressure, Washington risks undermining this legacy. Critics argue that using aid as a coercive tool can erode American moral authority and diminish the influence that has allowed the United States to maintain a positive image on the world stage. Diminished influence in Africa. Furthermore, this approach could have broader geopolitical repercussions. South Africa is not only a significant beneficiary of U.S. aid, but also a key player in regional economic and political affairs. If American policy is perceived as overreaching, other African nations might be encouraged to diversify their international partnerships, potentially turning to alternative blocs or economic allies. In this scenario, the United States may lose leverage and influence in future trade and policy negotiations. Shifts in economic alliances. Although the PEPFAR funding affected represents a modest 17%, the decision is symbolic in nature. In a trade war context, the use of aid as a bargaining chip sets a dangerous precedent. If the United States continues to tie its foreign aid to policy demands, affected countries may seek to reduce dependency on American economic support. South Africa, with its diversified economy and capacity for self-reliance, is well positioned to reallocate domestic resources to cover the gap. This independence could encourage a realignment of economic alliances, where South Africa and other nations move closer to blocs like BRICS or establish stronger ties with emerging economies. Costs to U.S. trade interests. For the United States, such a realignment would translate into reduced market access and diminished economic influence. The symbolic cost may eventually become a strategic loss if key trading partners begin to view U.S. aid policies as tools of coercion rather than genuine support. In a broader trade war, the nation that insists on using aid as a political lever risks alienating partners and reducing its role in shaping economic policies in the region. In conclusion, while President Trump's announcement to freeze aid to South Africa, specifically affecting the PEPFAR program, may initially appear to be a significant setback, the implications are far more symbolic than material. South Africa stands to lose little in practical terms, as the 17% funding gap can be easily covered by domestic resources. Moreover, the government's stance is likely to be celebrated for resisting U.S. pressure and asserting national sovereignty. On the other hand, the United States risks damaging its reputation and soft power. By leveraging aid as a tool of coercion, Washington may inadvertently diminish its global influence and encourage affected nations to seek alternative alliances. In the context of a broader trade war, such a move could weaken American economic leverage, while South Africa could emerge even stronger, recognized as a nation that boldly defends its interests. This analysis from an observer's perspective underscores that the decision to freeze aid is not a threat to South Africa's stability or reputation, but rather an opportunity for the country to reaffirm its independence and resilience in the face of external pressure. Thank you.